First lines really can make or break a book. It's the thing that makes you decide if you want to continue. It's the thing that needs to pull you in rather quickly, especially if you're trying out a book. And I feel like it's something that I haven't talked about a lot, so why not? Let's talk more about first lines. Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, we are going to be talking about some really great first lines in books. Now, this is not like a top 10 list or my all-time favorites, although there are some in here that are probably qualify as all-time favorites, but it's something I wanted to talk about because I recently was reading a book, City of Lies by Sam Hawke, and this starts with just such a really great line. And so I was thinking to myself, you know what, I haven't done talking about first lines in a while. And I did a video where I just kind of blindly reacted to some first lines, but I don't feel like I've talked about really just like one of my favorites. So I went through and I'm like, what are some books I remember that I have read that have really, really good first lines, and figured we would talk about them. So starting with, of course, City of Lies, because I have to tell you what the line is that made me decide to do this video. This one starts with, I was 7 years old the first time my uncle poisoned me. And that just immediately, you're like, well, hold on a minute. What is happening here? And I was so curious what the premise was going to be. And this is setting up, too, that the uncle is the royal, like, poisoner slash proofer of food, and we're following a character who's been raised to detect poisons and that type of stuff. It's all life. Really, really interesting premise, but just that line, immediately, I was 7 years old the first time my uncle poisoned me. Immediately you want to know what's going to come next. And so I thought it was such a great line. So I'll mention first a couple that I've definitely talked about before. One really won't surprise you, but the other one too is really great. We'll wait and do the really obvious one next. But lines I've mentioned, but Waylander by David Gemmell, which I've talked to because there's an anecdote about this one in the back where specifically he says he gave this line as an example of a bad first line because it would start the pacing off too quickly and then you would have to keep up with the whole time, but then loved it so much he wrote it anyway. And that line is, they had begun to torture the priest when the stranger stepped from the shadows of the trees. And it's just like, immediately. So like, very action, there's a priest being tortured, the stranger comes up, like, again, I just feel like that pulls you in, it starts things off right away. So kind of in a similar note where you're just immediately like, oh, this is crazy, let's find out more. Now, there are lots of other kinds of first lines, and that's part of what I'll be talking about here, is not just the lines I like, but why I like them, or some different kinds, because of course, I have to mention The Wheel of Time, which it varies a little bit, but all of the Wheel of Time books starting with something to the effect of, the wheel of time turns, and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend, then fade to myth, and are long forgot when that age that birthed them comes again. And it does vary a little bit each book. That one actually is, I think, mostly from The Great Hunt. But it's something, too, which I do love The Wheel of Time. I've talked about it a lot. And I love the openings, but it's just like there's something about it. This is more like it's setting the tone, the atmosphere of what's happening, like the big picture premise that we have the Wheel of Time. The idea, especially in the early books, there was this focus on old stories, these connections. It's a big thing, so it really just sets the tone, lets you know what you're getting into. That, to me, definitely screams Wheel of Time, big, long series where we're going to dive into this kind of thing, and so I think it works really, really well. There are definitely other types, though. So another one we can talk about here, which is very different. So I'm going to do both. I mostly did these from the first chapter or the prologue. It just depends which one talked to me more. But So Reven Earth by Zamar Amar. This, I feel like, is interesting for a couple different reasons, too. Because the prologue starts with everything ended in fire, which is an immediate, like, that's that action-y starting right off the bat, that big draw where you're like, okay, this is exciting. What's happening? And then chapter 1... after that starts with Garula birds sang. So it's a very different feel. Everything ended in fire to Garula birds sang. Like, I love the contrast between these super short first lines of the prologue and the first chapter that's giving very different feels, setting a very different tone, and also the fact that what's a Garula bird? Now I'm curious and I want to know. So it's doing both action and a world-building draw and having that kind of contrast, which I think works really well and is a really interesting first line. Now, sometimes first lines are just really profound or just give you this sense of like, oh, that's such a great line. For example, in The Darkness That Comes Before by R. Scott Baker, which has just, this is from the prologue, but just a phenomenal first opening line, which is, one cannot raise walls against what has been forgotten. And it's just like, there's so much. I'm sure you could analyze the heck out of that. And I know for a fact you could analyze the prologue for probably days because there's just so much going on there. But just, I love that line. One cannot raise walls against what has been forgotten. And again, it's something I feel like it sets the tone and kind of this style for the type of series, which I think is important with the first line. And sometimes it's just beautiful and pulls you in. And it just immediately, I'm just like, that gets me right where I need to be to read this book, where I'm just like, oh, I read that clicks in my brain. I'm like, let's go. This is going to be deeply profound. There's going to be this philosophical type of approach coming in. And immediately I feel like gets you where you know what's going to be coming. And you've got different kinds too. So one that I think is another interesting one for world building, that kind of tells you something about the world, and it's just kind of a clever first line. So we have The Witch Roads by Kate Elliott, I read recently, which starts with 130 years after the pall tore deadly rifts through the tranquil empire, it is still prudent to avoid walking abroad at night. And it is the first chapter, but it's coming from like a history kind of excerpt thing. But we immediately are finding things like there was something called the Pall. It was deadly. It was 130 years ago. We have this empire called the Tranquil Empire, and you can't go walking at night for some reason. And so it's just like, it's an immediate thing where we're setting a little bit of history, and also like, I have questions. Such a world building focused reader like me, I love, like, I'm like, ooh, okay, we have this empire, we have this deadly thing, you can't go, like, I want to know, and all of these questions it brings up is something that's a draw that works, I think, really well for me as well, so that is a fun one. Another one that's entirely different, I try to do these, like I said, there's really no specific order, so these just kind of came up, but I love the contrast, sometimes, again, with the tone, the setting, and just the draw. So this is another one where I feel like the initial line really draws you in. Blackstone Heart by Michael R. Fletcher. The first line we have here is, for an eternity, I was nothing but animal hunger. And immediately, it continues after that with setting this really dark tone, but it makes you feel dark. And like, it's for an eternity. And it's just like that feel of like, okay, so this is something going on. What's happening with this character that they feel like it's been this long? And it's just immediately that kind of tone, that visceral feeling to the line, which continues. Also, I feel like sets the tone well, but it's a drawing line. Like, I want to know what is happening, who is talking right now, what is going on, and it's just immediately, I feel like, pulls you in and makes you want to know more, which is a really great accomplishment from a first line. So then we have another one I feel like that's more like the atmospheric, or just the way that the writing is done and the beauty to it, but Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson, which I read this and I'm like, man, I really need to go back and read this, because it's been a long time since I read Malazan. It's one I always tell myself I need to reread. But then I read the first line, which is first line of the prologue. The stains of rust seem to map blood seas on the black pocked surface of Mock's vein. And I'm just like, that's beautiful. I love that. I just like that description. So this one is more of like a writing style type of thing, which you get sometimes where you just read the first line and you're like, ooh, I like the writing style. And I feel like that's what this one gives me as well, which, again, kind of setting the atmosphere, the expectations of what you're getting into. Erickson's not like an overly flowery type of prose, but he does have, I would say, elevated prose and really good descriptions as well. And so that immediately kind of gives you that feel and that pull in. So again, different from a lot of the ones we've talked about, but immediately for me, I'm just like, I like that style, and it makes me want to just sit down and read the book. So I think well accomplished. So then one again that's very different, more so because it does kind of set tonally, but also just gives you the question and kind of immediately takes you off guard a little bit, I feel like, is Lord Fowl's Bane by Stephen R. Donaldson. And this is the first book in the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant the Unbeliever, and does something I feel like really interesting, especially if you don't know what it's about. It's just a really genius first line. So the first chapter, I will tell you for context because it makes it better, is called The Golden Boy. And the first sentence is, she came out of the store just in time to see her young son playing on the sidewalk directly in the path of the gray, gaunt man who strode down the center of the walk like a mechanical derelict. And so immediately, the story is got to be about the boy, right? Or maybe the woman who sees it happening. And no, the main character of the story is the gray, gaunt man who stood like a mechanical derelict. Like, that's the main character of the story. And it's that kind of juxtaposition and that feel you get in. And again, with the whole part of the premise here being it's not the character who would normally be the main character of your fantasy story. So I really like that because you start and then you realize that, oh no, that's the character we're following. What a first introduction to a character. So also one I just feel like works really well for different reasons also. And then we have one that, again, is kind of, I feel like one of those just really, really great prologue type of lines where you immediately just want to know more of what happens and sets the atmosphere. And that is The Fangs of War by E.J. Doble, which I actually still need to read. But I read the prologue for like a first chapter challenge, and it's just really stuck with me. And so I don't know why I haven't gotten to it. But again, I want to read it after reading this again because it starts with, on a silent shore in a distant land, the world was coming to an end. And just immediately. And the prologue in general is phenomenal. And I really, really liked it. So I really do need to get to this book. This is just making me want to read that and reread some of these other things. But it's one that stuck with me. And again, it sets that up. It's that really big, high action type of draw in. And just also something about the way that sentence flows. On a silent shore in a distant land, the world was coming to an end. So it's something that's like both huge, world shattering, but also kind of distant and like you're observing. And so it just does a lot of things and pulls in. But there you have it. There are 10 different, really, I think, great opening lines. Be really curious what you think of any of these, or let me know some of your favorite ones in before somebody's going to do The Hobbit. I know it's going to happen, and that's also there. It is a really good opening line as well for a lot of questions because, again, like you're questioning, like, what is a Hobbit, that type of thing. But so, yeah, I'm waiting for that as well. But let me know some of your favorite first lines or just some really good ones, too. Like I said, this wasn't any particular order, but I think it was a fun thing to explore. So hopefully you enjoyed. But that is it for this one. Make sure to give the video a like if you did enjoy it. Check the links in the description, as always, for the Patreon if you want to support what I do, as well as the Wizard of the Enclave Discord if you want to chat books, whether any of these books, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun, and we'd love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.